Ladies and gentlemen, I was listening to the presentations, the three presentations, and was quite taken up by the interest on the new project that is beginning to take shape. And what I would like to do in the next few minutes is to try and explain why one should try and market the opportunities available in Sri Lanka, and also perhaps to give you some details as to how the issues that you discussed here in terms of shifting of the goalposts, the laws, the regulations, the taxes are being dealt with, so that you can have some sort of formed idea in your head when you go and speak to investors who you would like to bring to Sri Lanka. I have a vested interest, obviously, to try and bring investors to Sri Lanka, because as a member of the government, it is my job to try and attract FDIs. Now, before I get to the specific subjects, I would like to give you a kind of an overview. Sri Lanka is certainly going to continue down the road of opening up and linking with the rest of the world. Our history, if one looks at, would provide evidence that we were a trading nation, we were a logistics hub, we always profited and benefited and prospered by engaging with the world. Yesterday I took my 13-year-old daughter to a place called Kadramale. I don't know how many people have been to this place called Kadramale. So Kadramale, the legend says, is where Kuwini's palace was. And even though the signage is 1,000 years off, it says 543 AD, the legend says it was 543 BC that Vijay landed in this copper shores called Thambapani. And there was a now destroyed, supposedly a 35-foot statue of a horse. And that is because it was a trading place for horses. They trade horses for pearls, and it was an emporium. I just gave you some history, and if you fast forward this country's history, you'll see every era that we were prosperous, we were engaging with the rest of the world. So unless one is warped in his or her mind to close this place up and build walls, there is no other way but to engage with the outside world, create laws and regulations for that to happen easily and prosper. Now, in that process, Sri Lanka is located in the most enviable location going forward for the next 25, 50 years. The growth of the global economy is going to be generated in this part of the world. I don't consider Sri Lanka a South Asian country. I consider Sri Lanka an Indian Ocean country that immediately widens your horizons. And I also believe that the success of Dubai and Singapore is really the failure of Ceylon due to various reasons, that we must now be determined to go beyond and be able to live in this country as Sri Lankan citizens, and to be able to build bridges with communities and religions and races. And we hope that we've turned that page, we have a new chapter, and we hope that we will receive unstinted support from all Sri Lankans and former Sri Lankans here and abroad to traverse this journey that we've begun, because it is absolutely critical that we are able to have stability on this island, political and social stability, without which no investor is going to come, because investors are not interested in 5 years or 10 years, but 35 years in most cases that I heard. Now, in this sort of geographic advantage that we have, we are also talking to and are in fairly deep discussions with our friends in the region and beyond. For instance, the Japanese and the Sri Lankans are talking about what we call free and open Asia-Pacific policy and maritime order. Then with the Chinese, obviously we are in discussions on the OBOR, or the Belt and Road Initiative. With the Indians, we are talking about the neighborhood first policy. With the Europeans, now we have had successful negotiations, and we have regained duty-free access to all 28 European Union countries. With the British, we are discussing on a post-Brexit free trade agreement. With the Americans, we have taken several steps forward and are in negotiations with what we call the TIFA, perhaps moving into a better, easier access to the American market. In terms of trade agreements, we just signed the first trade agreement since the early 2000s, so I think 1999, with Singapore, the first one with the Southeast Asian nation. Hopefully that will take us closer to ASEAN, and sooner than later to join what is called the RCEP, Regional Economic Cooperation program. With China and India, we are negotiating free trade agreements. With India, we have one which we are enhancing. No, I'm just trying to sort of give you the background, sort of the bigger canvas as to why and how Sri Lanka will benefit in this growth creating process that is taking place in the Indian Ocean, and particularly in the Bay of Bengal region. If you look at countries like Bangladesh and Myanmar and others in the Bay of Bengal region, growth is sort of happening as you see it. It is just so dynamic. And if you go further down, Malaysia and Thailand and all of those Bay of Bengal nations. And then to the south of India, north of Sri Lanka, you have the 5 fast-growing Indian states: Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Telangana, and Andhra, which has about 450 million people and an economy of similar size, 450 billion US dollars. And if you look west, beyond the sort of the Middle Eastern region, and then back down to the east coast of Africa, where you see most of growth taking place, some of the fastest growing smaller countries in the world in that region. So if you position Sri Lanka, we are in the right place at the right time to profit from the growth that is going to take place both to the east, to the west, and to the north of this island. So therefore, if one makes the right call, the gentleman was talking about Bangkok and the other places and how Bangkok developed and the other places developed, and he sort of compared it with Colombo and the rest of the other areas in Sri Lanka. You can also take that same example in the region. Right? Some nations have developed, some others are developing, and in that process of development, how does one look at Sri Lanka and take a chance. Always investment is also beyond interest rates and investment policies and taxes. It's also about gut. You know, why would I put my money here, right? And most of you have an affinity to Sri Lanka. Lots of you, several of you, or two of you who spoke, you know, left this country and are working overseas. The gentleman here from Germany, equal 35 years, came to Sri Lanka and is running successful enterprises here. Now, let's get specifically down to the project that you are interested in that, from what I understand, it's about projects and managing projects and doing projects and investing in bigger projects rather than smaller projects. So the example of this killer virus, or the misnomer of tourism, I agree with you, and that it is high time that we move away from the southwest monsoon of May to September, or the northeast monsoon from October to January, February, which then determines the season and the off-season on the island. But of course, one can look at it as to whether one would go to the east or the west, depending on what time tourists would arrive in Sri Lanka. But the solution suggested by that data is a good one, and that is to look beyond your leisure 80% to the 20% niche, which he very aptly listed out here in terms of health tourism, ecotourism, pilgrims, sports tourism, etc. Now, how does one take it to the next level? And the particular case that he spoke on, the marinas and the elderly care, I already am aware of several investments currently taking place in elderly care, and people are beginning to realize the returns that can be generated in investing in elderly care. And I think that is something we need to look at in greater detail. The example of Croatia is a fascinating one, where he said with only 600 kilometers of coastline, they had 60 marinas. And I just checked online while you were speaking, has 18,000 birds in those marinas, plus another 30,000 birds in ports. So which creates a huge opportunity for that kind of investments to be made meaningful. So I wish you all the very best in your marina project, and if we can help you in any way, please do not hesitate. You said Maravilla, and I'll come to the Port City project with your second example, linking up with what you said and also what you mentioned. Now, the whole Port City project is interesting in multiple aspects. First of all, it was something that this government inherited. We didn't plan on it, but it was something that was signed by Xi Jinping himself. And Xi Jinping signs something, it gets done. You know, he doesn't sign every project, and he doesn't go to various countries and cut the first sort of soil, or in this case, perhaps take the first bucket of sand and put it back in the ocean. What we did when this government came to office was to renegotiate that agreement because we were not willing to sell 20 hectares right outside of the CBD in Colombo, in front of the president's office, the central bank, and so on, with sovereign rights to a Chinese company. That was not going to be. So therefore, it took some time for the government to renegotiate the agreement, particularly in terms of stopping the sale of the the land outright with sovereign rights, but to a 99-year lease, which will then be managed by a corporation, a joint stock corporation that will be created to run that reclaimed property.